Thomas, thank you for joining us today as we actually discuss this book that you were a really key contributor in with us, building a data and AI platform with Postgres, transforming your business with intelligent data. I think when we started this book, the section that you wrote for us, I would have not considered to be anything other than delightfully esoteric. Yet by the time the book actually came out, this section is a foundational building block in less than 12 months
Yeah.
for the way the world will go. So can you talk to us about the piece that you wrote for us around human AI database management? Because it lays out a lot of interesting issues we need to start thinking about.
Right. Well, so thank you for asking me to contribute to the book and for doing this today. It was a pleasure. And the reason it was a pleasure, by the way, I love to talk about this topic, but my background was heavily in relational database. I began my career building relational databases back when we used to talk about third normal form was sort of the state of the art back then, to whomever that might, make any sense today. But from the very outset, for me, databases were a very human enterprise. And it required enormous human skill to build these things, to manage them, and to make them meaningful. So when I was tasked to write about database in the context of AI, I basically said, look, I'm not going to give you a tutorial on Postgres. There are people that know much more about that and can talk about that much better than I can. What I want to look at is this human component, right? And where things have come from when I started my career building relational databases to where they are today.
Mm.
And the big idea that I was trying to contribute, and I think this came across in the writing, is that databases aren't going away, number one. Postgres isn't going away. But it's going to become part of a hybrid world where humans and databases and AI coexist. And we work collaboratively with AI. And I'll be honest with you, in a probably uneasy way initially, because I still have the heart of a developer. I still work with many developers. And I know that when I talk to them about AI, their concern is, look, it won't do it as well as I will. And I want to come back to this because there's some truth to that. But to ignore AI and to say that I'm somehow above it or that it is not part of the solution, I think is incredibly naive of us, right? So the question, will AI leapfrog Postgres or will AI take over the developer's role in database? I think is a ridiculous question. In my view, it is a collaboration. We are building this new intelligent entity, and we will have to up our game as humans, as developers, to sort of meet it. It will call us out. It will tell us where we're doing things that don't make sense. It will tell us when the values we espouse don't align with our actions. And while I could talk about that on a societal canvas, I think it also applies to developers, to architects, to people who are building databases and using databases. What I think is essential for us to realize is that the database itself, however, is changing. And again, you can't have this conversation, Michael, without having it on a social canvas. The whole notion of truth is becoming very contextual. Database has always been the context within which we infer truth. And going back to my third and fourth normal form, the whole idea was, great, give me a database that is reliable, that has integrity. And I think today databases are much more fluid. They're much more organic. And the only way to keep up with that fluidity, with that organic nature of the database, is with AI. The complexity of these things has exceeded our ability as humans to really keep up with the purpose that they serve. So to me, data itself is changing. Databases are becoming a much more organic entity. We need AI to be able to help us deal with that, to sort of reshape our thinking around what databases are, um, and to keep up with the rest of the world, because databases are, at the end of the day, the sort of the infrastructure on which we base so much of the world today. So my role was basically to say, to bring this down to sort of its essence, the ground under us is shifting. It's moving fast. And your comment at the outset about how far things have moved in 12 months is testament to that. And we need to stop pretending that the old mental models are going to survive. They're not. And we as humans have to up our game as AI forces us to, I think, become more competent at the things that humans are really good at, which is intention, creativity, innovation, imagination, those things that are very human qualities, while AI does the grunt work, the heavy lifting that, unfortunately, I think we spent too much of our time doing over the past many decades that I've grown up in this industry. So long answer to what was a short question, but it's a fascinating topic, I think, to look at how humans and AI will coexist in this new world.
So let me take maybe one step further for us to go, because it's a fascinating conversation. Let's assume one can automate the mundane to free up human creativity in a world increasingly focused on hopefully Postgres and open source
Right,
solutions, which is clearly what we're seeing.
right.
Give me a Monday morning when you say, "Do you know, I'm going to automate the mundane
Mm.
and free up creativity." What do those first 3 to 5 steps look like for you?
What a wonderful way to sort of put this in context. Look, I think that so let's first uh, create a baseline. If we think about this as sort of in a healthcare model, what's the baseline look like today? The baseline for most developers, and I use that term very broadly, people that are involved in architecting information technology solutions that use Postgres and open source and databases today as part of their purpose. It's what they do. It's how they get meaning in life is by building these things and managing them. For them, I think the day begins with great intentions, but quickly gets drawn into an administrative dungeon. And I say that dramatically because I think that's unfortunately the way that we live our lives. We end up putting out fires. We end up doing all the administrative things that take us away from what really gives us joy. And what gives us joy is using our imagination, being innovative, being creative. So if the baseline is spending 80% of my day doing the administrative work and 20%, and usually 20% off the clock, doing those things
Mm.
that truly feed my soul, I would flip that around. And I would say what I envision is an 80-20, where 80% of my time is spent on the imaginative things. Those things that today, to give you a real context here, those things that today, if I caught myself doing it for more than 30 minutes, I would say, oh my God, I got to get back to work because what I'm doing isn't adding value. It's not being productive.
Mm.
If the AI can do the productive stuff, if AI can do the things that have immediate economic consequence, I can then pull myself away and do those things that today I catch myself doing and saying I shouldn't be doing that. That's not where I add value. It's a complete inversion of the model today, where most of my time is spent as an administrator and I simply don't get to fulfill the wonderful objective I had at the beginning of the day through the course of the day as the rest of the world sort of creeps in and takes over.
It's very tough for someone who does that day in, day in, day out, to recognize that that's a pattern you have to break, particularly if you're going to be building these intelligent AI and data platforms where most of your day will be learning. It won't be repetition.
It won't be, but as I talked to, I was just having a conversation yesterday with a developer who works for a very large, very successful company that uses IT as the core of its business. And he was using, in this case, an AI to write some code. And he said to me, I think I'm going to be out of a job. And my comment to him was, no, you will not be. You'll be in a different job. And the job you're doing right now is not the one that you want to be doing. What you get joy out of is being the person who comes up with something new. And then you're also the one that has to enable that something new. What if you had a workforce, a set of AI workers that could begin testing and sandboxing, experimenting with your idea while you move on to another idea? What would that look like? What would that feel like? And I think it's tough for us to, as we just said, it's tough for us to envision that future because we've been so conditioned to use metrics around productivity that are very tactical, very
Mm.
execution oriented. But I think that's going to change very rapidly, especially for the community that this book was written for. They will have to engage in a much higher level of human imagination than they've had to before. It will be difficult to make that change, but it will be the best way to say it, Michael, is that in 5 years, we will look back on the way we work today and think to ourselves, dear Lord, how did I get through the day? No, I didn't have the joy. I didn't have the wonder. I didn't have the imagination and the license to exercise all of those. How did I get through the day 5 years ago? And those who are coming into the industry will say, how did you work that way 5 years ago? What could that possibly have been like? That's horrible. It's kind of like, thinking about how in the Civil War, they used to do amputations without
Mm.
anesthesia. How do you practice medicine doing that? I think that's the same attitude we'll have towards the way we practice information technology, the way we build databases, the way that we maintain them today.
What a great conversation. Thomas, it's a really beautiful piece. I really would recommend anybody reading the book, frankly, goes to that chapter first in that particular section, because it completely opens your mind to the possibilities of what's out there in front of us. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to more conversations like this with you in the future. Thank you.
It was my pleasure, Michael. Thank you for having me.